app and back, like closing out the app and clicking back in.
Okay.
I don't know what I do with my phone. I just want to look it up.
Careful there, McJiggles.
McJiggles. Floor is yours.
So I guess just, introduce yourself and say how you're involved
Okay.
for those that aren't here.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm Matt Albrecht. I'm Lindsay's husband, and therefore by default I'm here. No.
No, true.
So a little bit about me, so you know where I'm coming from this talk. I'd like to say that I'm a realist, but if I was honest with myself, I'd say I was a pessimist. So understanding that, where I'm coming from, you may get a little more out of it. You know, you got the Richard Simmons on one scale, and I don't know, is it Ice Cube that's in that movie that says, "I seen this movie, that black guy dies first."
It's not Ice Cube, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever the guy is. So I'm more of the, I've seen this movie, I'm gonna die first. So anyway, worst case scenario, I think. So anyway, Lindsay and Melena asked me to kind of talk about having your partner's support in the business, and so I come up with like 4 different levels of support. I'm gonna have to look them up because I don't want to botch it. And you could add more levels if you wanted to or whatever else, but these are just 4 levels, and you can break them down into micro levels if you wanted. But the first level, your spouse or significant other or partner, they don't want to be involved at all, and it's a fight just for you to be a part of Beachbody.
I mean, peach booty.
The second level is they're okay with you being a part of it, but don't really offer any encouragement, won't really talk to you about it. They're willing to talk about it only if you bring it up. Third level, thinks it's a good thing, you're doing something for yourself, offers encouragement, and helps you to stay on track with your diet. I don't want to say diet because it's not your meal planning or whatever you want to call it, but helps you keep on track with your eating. And then the fourth level is thinks it's a way to support the family, see thousands of dollars rolling in each month, and they can come home from their thankless job and do something that they really want to do. So that would be the top level of support, obviously. So with those levels, I'm just going to kind of go around the room and make this a little interactive. Janice, I'll start with you. At what level do you think your husband's at with you?
He's probably a 3.
A 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
That's
Elena?
same with
3.
Ben. Ben's a 3.
Honey?
I would say you've gotten to a 3, barely to a 4, now that you're seeing money coming in.
I would say
don't
I'm
know.
at a 3.
I didn't say you haven't really voiced, so I would say 3.
Okay. And Amanda?
I'm Amanda, by the way. I haven't actually met you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good. It was my fault.
I knew just from interactions with my wife and videos.
So JR is a solid 3.
Solid 3. So good. So all of you, and which I kind of figured since they allowed you to come here that it was probably
They allowed.
around a 3.
Ben, if you're watching this.
Hopefully they encouraged you to come to get something good out of the weekend and to do something good for yourself. So my next question is, why are they at that level? So
Do you want me to answer?
I was gonna say, yeah.
no,
Is this
just
like
it's a
a feedback or-
hypothetical.
okay,
Think about it. Why are they at that level, and at what level do you want them to be? you know, some people may not, that are watching this, may not be coaching. They may just be a participant and do the exercises and meal plans and whatever else, and they're trying to improve themselves, and they're not going to go on to the coaching. So you know, what level of encouragement do you want your spouse or partner to be at for you to meet and reach your goals? The next question is, have you communicated those with your partner? Does your partner know where you're headed and what you're trying to accomplish by doing this? And then the last question is, who's responsible to determine which level of support they're getting from their spouse or partner? Is it those that are involved in the Beachbody system, or is it the responsibility of the partner to offer that support? And
No, what was
it's
that?
it's kind of an odd question, but I didn't know how else to phrase it.
What's that question? Who's responsible to determine?
the support.
The support that comes from the spouse.
Yeah, the support level of the spouse. What do you guys think?
You can only do so much at that point. It's up to your partner to like see the changes and decide to level up. So I mean,
Okay.
all you can do is what you can do, and if they see the changes, so I guess it's kind of twofold. I mean, you're responsible for your half, and they're responsible to try and encourage and support and go with you in that.
But on that, I think you have to share, because I mean, I've discussed this with Lindsay, is like, I didn't share a whole lot of the biz side of it with Ben. He was supporting me working out, taking care of myself, but until I shared that with him is when my business exploded.
Yeah.
Because then he realized what I was doing and was there to support, and now he asks questions about it, like the business side of it. But like, so that's, I think, you know, it's got to be a lot on you too, not only them but you.
And so I will say that role lies within you guys. And I'll explain why here in a minute. And I'll go through these levels and relate my experience, our experience, what we went through in order to get where my wife's at today and where I'm at on a support level today. But the reason that I say it's your responsibility is you got to look at what you're doing as a business. I know some of them ain't doing it as a business, but what you're doing, you're working out, your diet, whatever, that is your business. That is your baby. That's your goals. That's what you're trying to accomplish. And so therefore I'll call it your business. Okay. Now think of somebody showing up at a brick and mortar business. You called them and you said, "Hey, I want you to invest in my business." What are they going to want?
Your financials, your background, your business plan, where you're headed, what you're doing.
Yeah, they're going to want all sorts of information, right? If you don't give it to them, are you going to get the investment?
Nope.
No. So depending on what level you're at with your partner in this will determine what you need to tell them you want invested into your business, into you. Okay? So a couple things that you've got to do to attract investors or your spouse to invest into what you're doing is you got to show up. You know, you can't run a brick and mortar business by not showing up. Okay? You have to be there day in, day out and make it happen. Nobody else is going to push you. Nobody else is going to come check on you and say, hey, how's your business deal coming? Okay? Because at this point, who really cares? You know, I mean, your coaches are invested in you, and they're going to push you, and they're going to ask you, but at some point, you know, you're going to have other people joining your team. You're going to have other people investing into your business. And the investment I'm talking about right now is an emotional investment. Okay, that support is an emotional investment into you. So show up. If you don't show up, how do you expect them to invest into what you're trying to sell? Okay, consistent. You have to be consistent. For me, I train horses. If I work with a horse one day, don't work with it the next, and then go work with it the second day or the third day, I'm just reiterating what I taught it 3 days ago, and it's slow building and everything else. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, hey, you need to go all out and you need to spend 18, you know, hours a day on this specific thing, but whatever time you have, you need to be consistent with that time. Whether it's a half hour, hour, whatever it is, that needs to be consistent day in and day out. When they see that consistency, then they feel like they can emotionally invest into what it is that you're trying to accomplish and be on board with it. And then 3, put in the work. You know, you show up, you're consistent, but and I'll say put in the right work. You may be there, you may be putting in the work, but for example, when I first started training horses, it took me an hour and a half to accomplish now what I'm going to accomplish in 15 minutes. Because I got good at what I did and I put the work in correctly over time, and I became better at it. You know, and so
You put in the hours, become a master at that.
mm-hmm. And so in the beginning, it may be putting in a lot of hours. You know, your conversion rate, maybe you have to talk to 300 people before you get one. And it may be once you reach a certain level, you only need to talk to 30 people in order to have one jump on and support you, and you support them in what they're trying to accomplish. Okay? And then the 4th one is sustainability. And sustainability is not so much something from a standpoint of support from a spouse or a partner, but I think it's something that's pertinent to your business. As your business grows, how are you going to sustain it? Because it will take on a different form as it grows. You know, in the beginning, you have to, you know, show up, be consistent, put in the work. But when you reach a certain point, you're going to have to turn around and you're going to have to help others show up, put in the work, and be consistent with their time. And so you will transfer more over to a coaching role. So I won't go more into that because it don't pertain as much into what I'm gonna go into. So now with that background, when Lindsay started, I was at a 1. I mean, I did not want her to be involved, and I told her from day 1. I says, you can work out with the person who is coming over and working out with her in the morning, whatever. I said, but I don't want you to be involved. I says, use her videos, do her thing, whatever. Buy stuff from, well, I didn't even want her buying stuff, actually. And there came a point where she had signed up, and I knew she signed up, but she didn't tell me. And we were on a car ride, and I said, you signed up with Beachbody, didn't you? And she said, yes. And I was pissed. I was mad. And I don't think we talked to each other the rest of the night. Like, because I was like, I told you, we've been down this road before. It don't work. You're doing photography, you're doing your wood business, you're being a mom, you're being a wife, housekeeper, all these different things, and you're just adding one more thing that ain't gonna work. I said, and I was mad. I was angry. And you know, she borrowed the money from a friend to get involved, and it came to where I was like, you're getting your own separate bank account, and you better make this work for yourself. You don't take anything from our living, what I make out of my job to take care of the family. You don't take anything out of my business. I'm trying to grow my business and make it good. And I would suggest you don't take anything out of your wood business because it'll run it into the ground. And that's where I was at. And kind of left it at that. And she became a coach for another Beachbody rep so that she could at least pay for her product each month and different things like that. And I don't know, how long were you involved before maybe a year, 2 years went by? Just kind of at that point. She would work, well, her friend would come over in the morning, they would work out sometimes, they'd talk the majority of the time, a lot of times, and it was just nothing really happening. Business wasn't growing. She wasn't seeing any results as far as weight loss or inches or anything else, but she showed up. Every day she showed up. My wife has not been a early riser it's been one of the biggest fights probably since we were married. She wanted to keep me up till 12, and I'm like, hey, I get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. That's who I am. So, you know, kind of help me out here. Now she wakes up before I do, and so she showed up. She showed up every day, even if they did just talk for part of the time. But it at least made me say, okay, she's showing up. You know, she's putting in some time and some work to where I wasn't quite as negative about it, but I was still like, you know, hey, yeah, you're getting it paid for, but what are you trying to get out of this? And we didn't have those conversations, and that's why I asked that question. Have you communicated that with your partner? Have you told them what you want to get out of it? You know, and I would suggest if your partner's at a 1, don't become, hey, I'm going to bring you home from your job, and it's going to be amazing, and yeah. And coming back to the pessimistic side of me, for me, it's like, don't give me this lip service. Don't tell me all this grandeur crap, because that's all it is crap until you show up and you show me that you're going to do it. And then I will believe you. Janice, I'll talk to you later about my issues, so we can go through that. Anyway, so then it got to where, you know, she started kind of communicating with me a little bit about different things, and I wouldn't say that the communication was great. Like, you know, she's more of the Richard Simmons type. This is great. Let's all have fun. Let's woo. And I'm more of like, calm the down. and anyway, so between all that, I mean, she would get up here and I'd knock her down to earth again and say, well, you need to be realistic and come down here, you know. So between her optimism and my pessimism, we kind of come to this spot of realism. I guess you could say. Um, but some of the conversations were not good. I mean, both of us come away probably, but it gave both of us time to sit and think about what it was and what really she wanted to get out of it, what really where I was coming from, what I had expected. So for me, and that's where I talk about, have you asked your spouse, or significant other, why are you at one of these three levels? Like for me, why do you not want me doing this? For me, it was easy. Financially, and she was taking time away from the family. Those were two things for me that just really tick me off. You don't drain our income and you don't take away from family time. Family time is family time. And she was listening to all these podcasts and books and everything else. And she sent me a book called Start by John Acuff. And in that, it took me forever to listen to it, by the way. I was just like, I don't want none of your self-help bullshit. Sorry, I probably shouldn't say that on
Oh, honestly,
video,
yeah.
but
It's a shit show.
I was gonna say,
and it's not that I don't do those things and I don't listen to the self-help and I don't try to become better, but it was because she associated it with Beachbody. I didn't want anything to do with it. I ended up listening to parts of it, and there was a part in there where he was talking about the optimistic person that's always jumping on opportunities and the realistic person that's saying, whoa, put on the brakes, you know? And one of the things in there that him and his wife finally talked about and they finally understood is it's okay to jump out and start new things. If you want to be an entrepreneur, whether it's this business or something else, it's okay to jump out there and do it, but there needs to be some boundaries. There needs to be, okay, we have this much time allotted in a day. Don't take away from, for me, the finances and family time. And so after listening to that, we kind of had a better conversation about the business, and that's one of the things that we kind of set some boundaries was, you know, hey, if you're going to build this, I don't care if you're up till 1 o'clock in the morning doing whatever it is that you do, but don't cut into the family and don't cut into our finances. So for me, I work a regular job. I leave the house at 5:30 in the morning. I come home, eat a little something, then I'm riding horses till almost dark 30. So by the time I get done with mine, we have very little family time to work with. And if she's off trying to do something else, this business that is taking away from what we're already doing and is working for us, then to me that was encroaching what we were doing, and that's not really accomplishing what we wanted to accomplish together. So anyway, we set those boundaries, we moved on. Sometime January, February of this year, I kind of jumped up into that level 2. I finally became okay with her doing it. I didn't really offer a bunch of encouragement, but I did say my opinions on a lot of things that I thought she needed to change with it. And I would talk about it when she brought it up. So I kind of jumped into that level 2 category. And this is where change started to happen for her and her business, and her weight, her looks, her appearance, her confidence. Everything about her started to change. Is when we could sit down and have the conversation. We finally got comfortable enough talking about it to where I just said, look, where is this going? you've been involved a year, 2 years, year and a half, somewhere around there. Nothing's changed. You've lost a couple pounds here and there at times. You haven't really gained anything in the business. You're at a standstill. And I basically told her, hey, you need to do this or get out. Because it's not doing you any good. It's not doing the family any good. It's just taking up a big chunk of your time because you aren't being fully committed to it. And at that point, that's where things changed for her, and she jumped to that put in the work level and basically showed me that I could invest my emotional support, my confidence and everything into her and her business to reach what she wanted to reach, because she finally started putting in the work. She finally started doing the things that made me say, you know, from the outside in, if you're looking at a brick and mortar business, if somebody sits there and doesn't do anything for 2 years at their business, are you going to invest in them? Probably not. You know, you're not going to throw money into something that they're going to take the money and it's just going to fall apart. Same with emotional investment. And I'm sure you see this a lot when you do your coaching. You know, one partner or the other holds back that emotional investment because of the return that they get. They're not willing to step out there on a limb because of the emotional return. So because
an emotional investment is so much more involved than a financial investment.
Yeah.
Financial investment, you can earn more money. But once you put your emotions out there and somebody has crushed those, it's a completely different pullback than it is a financial.
Yeah.
So that's a really good discovery on your part as like a couple that you notice that difference in push and pull.
Yeah, because I mean, like you say, money's one thing, but when it comes to your emotions and your heart and you putting things out there, you know, especially if it's been crushed before or something, you're not gonna put yourself out there to go through that hurt and pain anymore. It's a protection
Human response.
device that we've created. Now, part of that was we'd have been involved in these type of businesses before. Some of them were, hey, let's get rich, you know, selling this juice or vitamin or whatever else. And then others of it we really liked. One was leadership, one was finances, and we really liked the product itself. I'm not real comfortable with sales and stuff, so anyway, won't go into that part of it. But so anyway, she started putting in the work, and from that time forward, I would dare say the majority of the 30 pounds you've lost has happened since February, since that day. So she went 2 years without nothing happening to us sitting down and having a conversation of, you know, crap or get off the pot, that things started changing. Sorry, my vocabulary ain't very
We love
large,
it.
so
It's fabulous. It's real.
gonna
It's
get. But anyway, that's when things started to change for her, and that's where things started to change for me, where I jumped up into that number 3 category of, I think it's a good thing that she's doing for herself. I offer encouragement, hopefully, from time to time, and not, that's part of mine, is I always see things that can be improved on, and I tend to say, hey, you need to do this, and a little light on the encouragement side.
It's getting better.
But like meal plans, stuff like that, like I can say, hey, you know, probably shouldn't be eating that, or hey, probably, and one, she don't get offended anymore because she knows I'm on her side. That she knows that I'm emotionally invested now, instead of like, hey, this is your plan, you know, your meal plan. Don't eat that ice cream. Don't eat that candy bar. Oh, yep, see, you're not committed. You know, now it's coming from a different place. Now it's coming from, hey, you know,
It's coming
if
from
you,
you want to see her succeed
Yeah.
instead of fail.
yeah, it's coming from, hey, you know, by doing this, this is the result you're going to get. You want to keep on that track, let's stay on that track. Okay, so in the end, I guess, when you, all of you, I'm pretty sure, have been employed at some point in your life. You've had managers, you've had people you've worked with, you know. When you have people that you work with that are like constantly taking vacation, you know, constantly calling out sick, constantly, oh, I just don't feel good today, and so I'm not gonna do it, or you know, there's usually people that do that and try to get away from work all the time, and then people that come in and do all their work for them. The 80-20 rule, if any of you ever heard the 80-20 rule. Anyway, where are you at? Where are you? Are you the one that's showing up, dedicated, putting in the work, and communicating and calling for that emotional investment? Or are you the one destroying your emotional investment by not showing up, not putting in the work, not being consistent with what you're doing? This is your baby. You know, if you took a brand new child and only fed it every other time that it wants to be fed, when it grows up, how nourished is that child going to be? Bone development, brain development, physical or muscular development. Okay, you wouldn't do that to a child. Why would you do that with your business? And that's where kind of the sustainability comes in. If you build this by just feeding it every other day or every other time that it needs to be fed, your structural development ain't going to be there, your muscular development, your brain development. In other words, your business is only half there, it's only half solid. So if you're in one of these 4 levels and you want to get to the next level, that's for you to decide, and it's for you to go and communicate that with your partner. How are they going to help you? Maybe you have a hard time showing up. Hey, but communicate that to them. Hey, I need you to, because who's with you more, your coach or your spouse? Probably the coach, but but you know, your partner's there with you physically. They're the ones that are hopefully offering you the emotional support that you need, all the things that should come through a connection, through a partner, through a spouse, that help you feel comfortable in what you're doing, help you feel loved, help you feel a connection that you're doing the right thing, that you're headed the right way. Because even your coach can sit there and tell you those things all day, but if you have some reservation because your spouse or partner is not on board with where you're at and where you're trying to go, it's going to hold you back. subconsciously in the back of your mind, it's going to just hold you back a little bit from going the next step, pushing a little bit further to ultimately reaching where you want to go, because you and your spouse are not headed in the same direction. The thing that's come from this is, one, finances has always been a big thing in our marriage. Like, we'd try and track it, we'd do all these things to try and control our finances, everything else. And at this point in our marriage, it hasn't been something we've worried about this whole year. It's been something that has not been a hot topic for us. It's not because my wife's making like thousands of dollars in this business. It's just we have our separate businesses and stuff, but overall we're headed in the same direction. We have that communication. We know what each other wants out of what it is that we're doing. So try to communicate that with your partners, with your spouse. Open that dialogue. It's not gonna, especially if they're number one, it's not gonna happen. It's gonna look ugly. It's gonna look rough. But be committed to your relationship first and foremost. That no matter what contention there is in trying to make this thing work, I'm still with you. We're still together in this. We're still working towards something together. That's pretty much all I've got. And hopefully you guys haven't fallen asleep yet, so I guess we're good. Melena's been doodling a little bit, so I lost the attention for a little bit.
I'm a doodler.
What advice would you give to spouses, partners, in trying to get yourself to a place that you can hear what your spouse is trying to communicate to you? Because oftentimes when we're in level one, we don't even want to listen and hear. So what advice do you have for them to just be able to stop and listen to what their spouse is trying to communicate to them?
Mainly just doing that. Like, it doesn't take any special kind of, but the spouse, like I said, and that's kind of what I was making from the comment, we're in this together. We still want to be partners. We still want to be connected. So what is it that I've got to stop? I've got to listen to what you're trying to say, and that's where her putting in the work, and going for it, I had to stop and say, okay, she's going to do it. So I've got to sit here, okay, what do you want? What do you want? I had to stop and say, okay, I'm listening.
Perfect, I love that.
But had she not put in the work and kept going with it, I would have never stopped and said, because I'm like, I've seen this before. The black guy dies first. We've been down this road before. We know how it ends. We know everything about it. So in 2 years, you'll be done with it. You'll quit, and then it'll be the next thing, whatever, but with her just sticking with it, it's like, okay, you're serious enough about it that you've stayed with it this long. Okay, what am I not getting or seeing or hearing out of this?
I love it.
And so my advice to the spouses that are at number one is stop long before 2 years to have that conversation. Stop long before and say, okay, if you're gonna do this, let's define it up first. Let's not wander around for a couple of years trying to find our goal or our niche or what we want out of this deal. And that's whether it is, hey, I just want to get my mind right and I want to get my body right. Okay, if that's all you want out of it, what are we gonna do? What, from my standpoint, what do I need to help you with?
What do you need from me?
But at the same time, the spouse that's involved can't be expecting the spouse that's not involved to push them all the time. Because if it comes from somebody that don't really even want to be involved, having to push the person that is involved, it ain't gonna work. It just won't work. Because the supporter is that emotional investment that they're putting in, and they see that money going. Money is, that's how I'm gonna say this emotional investment is, somebody putting money into a physical business, and they see that person just fiddle-faddling around with the money and not really creating anything out of it. That person's gonna say, nope, you're on your own, I'm withdrawing from this, I'm cutting my losses, and I'm out. Same with that emotional investment. If they're having to, hey, I gave you this money, what are you doing with it? Hey, have you built your little trinket yet that you're trying to sell? Have you, what have you done with that? And well, I've kind of started down that road, but it didn't quite. So I'm kind of doing this and kind of doing that. They're like, I'm out. I am out, and that's going to be the same way when you ask for an emotional investment from your partner. Any other questions?
Well, thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable enough to share your story, because there's a lot of people that sit in your and Lindsay's position that don't know how to get past that hurdle. So thank you for being willing to share that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, last year was rough. There was talk of divorce, there was, and with all this going on and everything else, it was rough. Our conversations were not good conversations that we were having, and when it come down to it, like I said before, are we together or are we not? And I won't say it was all because of Beachbody, because it wasn't. There was a lot of stuff. Beachbody was just something piled on top,
right? That made you
to
have
the
conversations.
brokenness of the relationship that had been created. Of on both parts not providing an emotional investment, over years, and not really paying attention to it. So first and foremost, don't let this be that thing that, well, I'm doing it, and so get the heck out, and this happens to the partnership. Come together with the partnership and then figure out what it is where to go with the Beachbody deal, because the Beachbody can be a part of what it is that you're doing. You just have to figure out how you want it to fit in your relationship. Our relationships, we can bring a lot of things into our relationship, but we have to figure out how those things are going to fit into our relationships. But if we don't define those, then they're going to kill us. If we don't talk about them, they're going to kill us. Whether it's Beachbody or whether it's something else outside of that is killing a relationship. You got to start defining that. You got to start even setting boundaries in a relationship, and figure out what those things are and what it's going to look like. You have to take just like you have to take a business and say, this is what I want it to look like. You got to take your relationship and say, this is what I want it to look like. Could add this, I could add this, I could add a bunch of things to make it look like this over here. And they may not all be the same things to make it look a certain way. Couples may have the same thing, but they draw from a lot of different things to make it look the same.
Excuse me.
Any other questions, or maybe you guys have concerns from people on your team that maybe aren't in the spot that you guys are in, where your spouses are like a level 3. Concerns that maybe have been brought up in your coaching sessions, or that I can touch on with what me and Lindsay went through.
I think one might be the financial aspect, because you didn't want me to take from finances and you didn't want to take from family time. So for those that maybe want to do it and their spouses may be on board, but financially, like, how do they have that conversation with their spouse? Like, okay, I want to do this. Like, how can we figure out financially how to do it to where it can be a part of our end goal, like you said? Like, how do you have that conversation with them? Okay, it's gonna be this much. Like, can we figure out how to do it, because this is what I want? Can you be on board with that?
So one thing that kind of kept me a little on board, even though I was like, I ain't doing it. Like I said before, is I've always been big on self-development and making yourself a better person. I think weight feeling comfortable with where you're at has a big part of that subconscious psyche. And so those two things together, I mean, just the change in you from that conversation we had in February to now is completely different and well worth any money that we ever would have spent on it. And that's why I say try to define that up front, so you don't make that a financial burden for 2 years before you defined what it is, or before you put in the work to get what you wanted out of it. And so one is find a way. Like I said, she found being a coach, or not a coach, an assistant to another coach that would pay for a lot of it. And she didn't. I set that boundary, and she went about and she found the money, and she did it, and she went about doing all that stuff, and that made me realize that she was serious about it. But if they're completely cut off, I'm not spending any money on it, what can you do to pay for it each month? Whether it's a coach subscription, whether it's just your Shakeology, or just to have the membership to have access to the self-help stuff, whatever it is you want out of it, look at, okay, that's going to cost me this much. Let's see, I've got 2 hours or an hour time every day that's not taking out of family time, and it's not taking away from spending time with my partner, that I can wash somebody's windows, I can clean their house, I can pick up a babysitting for that hour. I can, there's a bunch of things that we can do to get us. I don't know how much it all costs, but but there's stuff that you can do that you can get $50 to $100 pretty easy in a week, just doing simple little things like that ain't gonna take away from that family time and that finances, but again, what's important to your spouse? Why are they rejecting it? I was rejecting it because of finances and family time. So she found a way to cover the finances, and she found a way to cover the family time to where we could have family time. That's all. Any good business out there, that's all they do is solve problems. I'm a horse trainer. People come to me because they don't know how to do it, or they don't have time to do it, or they may get hurt doing it because of their experience. So they come to me. I solve that problem for them in their life. That's what you guys do as coaches, is you solve problems for people. So how are you going to solve those problems in your relationship? Lindsay solved those 2 problems. After she solved those 2 problems, I'm like, well, I don't have a leg to stand on now. Because those were my 2 issues. Other than that, okay, I'm fine with it. Whatever you want to do. So when finances are in play, just, have a conversation with them. Say, hey, what if I can figure out the finances without taking anything away from our family? Out of our family budget. Would that, and have that say, would you allow me to do it? If I could find a way to where it don't take out of that. Or rephrase the question and say, what can I do that won't make this a burden on us financially? What do you suggest? Maybe they have some ideas. I found that people are a lot less defensive if you put the ball in their court and allow them to give you a answer. And maybe something you can live with, maybe something that you can't, and you may have to compromise. But we just went through a deal. I sat down, talked with the people, and just said, what do you guys want out of it? They told me what they wanted out of it. I was okay with it. I said, okay, it's good. Let's move on. Instead of saying, hey, this is what I want out of it. What are you guys going to do about it? So anyway, that would be my suggestion as far as the financial problem, is just say, okay, if this wasn't a financial burden to the family, would you allow me to do it? And if they say, well, no, okay, well, what else is there? Because, it may just be a smoke screen. Oh, finances. It may be a deeper rooted problem, but you've got to figure out what that is. Their first thing, you got to resolve that issue by coming up with some sort of solution and say, okay, if I did that, now what? If I did that, now what? Because I can't tell you what it's going to be for them, but they can tell you what it's going to be for them. And that's where I come back to, it's your responsibility to help them become emotionally invested in what you're doing. Any other questions?
No, I'm the best coach ever.
Well, thank you, honey.
Yes, thank you.